Hello, we are here for another episode of Shoebox Conversations, this time with Justin Prough and his three of his amazing series that he's been working on. Joining us is Sheli Silverio and S. Vollie Osborn, also known as Sam. Thank you so much for being here, Justin. We were so excited to talk to you, especially with the current political climate, there's climate change with so much going on. Your work is like integral, and so relevant to what's going on today. So thank you for being here.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. It's really an honor to be here. And yes, with everything going on, it's nice to be able to talk about what is going on.
Definitely. So before we get into some images, tell us about yourself. Like, how did your art career start? You were in advertising, so kind of, tell us how everything started.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, going way back, I actually went to school for engineering, to college for engineering, and 2 years as an engineering major, and then halfway through my second year, I'd always been taking art classes along the way, and I started really geeking about like calculus and how you can generate these different curves and how you can map this in different ways. And I actually started applying this in some of the design courses I was taking with the art department. And one day, my teacher, then advisor later, came to me and said, you should think about doing this because you're applying so many different aspects of your life into your work, and you seem to love it. Like, do you love engineers as much? And I looked at it and I said, well, no. Not that not that I think it was a worthy profession, but I really enjoyed expressing myself and using technology to do it. So in school is really kind of between, fine art and blending that with computer graphics, which then launched me in after school into a career in advertising, which was about 20 years in advertising, where I got to work with, Lee Clow at Chiat for a number of years and a bunch of really wonderful people along the way, and really loved it. But in the last few years, I really started to feel that I needed to give back to the larger community and the planet and try to do that through art. And that's kind of like spawned this new leg of my career, which is really focusing on doing fine art that communicates.
Definitely, and your work definitely does that, for sure. Awesome, that is a great start into looking at some images. So let me share my screen here. And I wanted to start off with
That's me.
I know, I always love surprising our artists with like the images that I share. And I always start off with an image of the artist, and I love this image. I think this should be on your website actually, instead of the other one that you have. So actually, well, before we get into this image, how are you doing during the pandemic? Like, what are you dealing with as an artist, as a father? I mean, there's so much going on. How are you doing?
It's been difficult. It's been difficult, and I think on an emotional level, it's been, I think, for a lot of people, really taxing. My wife and I, we have two children. One, he's a senior in high school this year, Griffin, and then our daughter Jordan, who's actually in junior high now. And last year, when they started Zoom school, both my wife and I ended up spending quite a bit of time kind of like working with them, kind of getting that set up and figured out. And luckily, we have the space and the technology to be able to accommodate that with the kids. And a lot of people don't, so we're really fortunate in those regards. But it's been difficult. I mean, with the political climate, the fires, the pandemic, the hurricanes, the political climate, and just kind of what's going on there. It's really been taxing personally on me. And there, I think we spoke about this a while ago when we had a conversation, my wife and I, that we're doing okay right now, but just the sense of just anguish is really hard to get around. I try to channel a lot of that into my work, But there are certain days where it's difficult not to just read the news and just want to wallow in despair. But I try not to do that. I try to channel it, but I think it is okay for people to take a break and say, you know, what we're going through now, this is all new. This is not normal. And, you know, I think taking care of yourself emotionally as well as physically is really important. So we're trying to do that. But I'll tell you what, it has been, you know, in terms of like trying to create work that messages, it's a dumpster fire of great place to find work. So, I mean, that is one thing. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's like every day I wish I was 10 times as efficient in terms of generating as I am, because you could be producing all kinds of stuff to document our times we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I just keep thinking we just need to take it day by day, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to think about. I mean, we have to take it 45 days or what are we, 44 days now before the election, but you know, mentally and for our sanity, you know, just concentrate on what's going on that day. And, you know, and like you said, self-care, just taking care of ourselves too.
And you'll notice from my picture here and my current haircut, this is my Corona haircut since I haven't been seeing a barber in a while. So that's what my hair used to look like about 6 months ago.
Wow.
This is what it looks like now. So it gets really dark when I cut it short. So it's kind of fun.
You and I went in opposite directions with that.
Yes, no, it's kind of like you either go really short or just let it go.
Yeah. Hey, I bought clippers at the beginning too.
Yeah, no, it works, man.
Yep, definitely. So this is a great picture to kind of get us started into your first, you know, the fictional reality series. Tell us about this photo and also how it's like a realistic representation almost of the paintings that you did. So tell us about this photo and then we'll start and I'll share the work after that.
Yeah, no, so I'm, believe it or not, I'm 5th generation Californian. My son is 6th generation Californian. And, you know, growing up, I actually grew up in Santa Cruz, but I had family in Newport Beach. So on the summers I'd spend in Newport Beach. So being around the ocean and the water is really kind of a way of life for me. And, you know, as you start to spend a lot of time along the coast in California, you start seeing things that anywhere else in the world would be like, this can't be true. Like this scene I just saw, that's impossible. That's like out of someone's like, you know, weird dream. But you see these things and, you know, when you start to think about them later, you do kind of romance them a little bit more, but there's a lot of interesting things that we're fortunate enough to see in California that a lot of people around the world don't get to see. And a lot of my early work and work that I do is around the ocean. And this specific picture was kind of, I went down, actually, I took this in situation, created the sign the whole bit, and I had actually, you know, set up the camera and then run over and sit down and do it. And the thought here is that, you know, just kind of like, you know, the random roadside vehicles you drive down by going down PCH of, you know, some weird happenings, surfboards in the back and someone hanging out doing different things. So that's me, and that's kind of a lot of the inspiration I get is just kind of being a beach bum artist, kind of like advertising guy. So that's sort of the idea behind this picture. But really, one of the things I've noticed in like the last 10 years of surfing is, and I'm really excited about it, is there's so many more like women in the lineups, and it actually makes the lineup, like surfing lineup, people actually out in the waves. And it's really wonderful. And like growing up as a kid, I never really saw that, but really heroic, right? So these are a couple of the pictures I've done, and not embarrassed about just, you know, it's hot, you're in the sun, you're putting wetsuits on and off. So just being out there and doing wonderful things. So these are actually, you know, snapshots of different moments that I've seen along, you know, Malibu coast. You know, the one on the left, you know, there's a couple really beautifully restored Volkswagen vans that you see at Malibu Surf Right at Beach a lot. And, you know, a few of them, there's like people have these classic surfboards from the 60s and they're pristine. But this is like, it's, you know, it's like you see these images and you're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, this is from yesteryear. It's like actually this took place about 3 weeks ago. Like I actually saw this 3 weeks ago and I painted it when I painted this. And then again, the image on the right, just this really empowerment that I see in my daughter and my wife, and that I really want to embrace about, both, females like being out in the lineup, doing wonderful things and just enjoying life. And I think it makes the world better.
What prompted you to use the dolls in the work?
So it's funny. So I started thinking about, California, and Mattel is a California company. And the first Malibu Barbie was the very first Barbie ever created. So I felt like, okay, well, if I start, setting up, and using toys to kind of represent these real moments, it actually starts to like plasticize or dream like these different scenes I've seen. So the way I work with these, I actually shoot different plates. So I'll go up and I'll set up a toy car and the dolls in situations, and I'll actually create scale models of like a little wall and different things. And I'll take photos of the different pieces, and then in Photoshop, I'll layer them. And then the last step I do is I go through and actually digitally hand paint them out to have this photographic quality to the image, but at the same time it's a painting. So it's a digital painting.
I love that kind of, that you can't really tell, it's whether it's a photograph or a digital painting, or I love that it plays with your eyes like that also.
And I love that you picked that up, because that was really intentional, thinking about the fictional reality of California beach culture. It's like, it's real, but it's also kind of plastic and surreal, and I really wanted to try to capture that in this work.
Yeah, definitely. And it leads us right into, your sculptural work. I mean, I love that you're like multidisciplinary. You experiment and you play with different things. And so tell us about this work.
Yeah, no, this is great. So this is a part of my Seascapes Found series. And this is actually Seascape Found 2. And, growing up around the ocean, it's like, I've always kind of been a sort of like a collector or a scavenger, and you'll find these wonderful bits of like sea life debris, right? So shells and driftwood and pieces of rock and little bits of sea glass here and there. And, everything we have going on with the environment and climate change and kind of the heating of our world, I really wanted to really start to create time capsules of these pieces of elements that we can find from the ocean now, that if we kind of continue on the path we are, in a lot of ways, these things aren't going to be around anymore. So we're slowly replacing the seashore debris of creatures that make shells and wooden stuff with plastic in our oceans, and it's something I wanted to voice with these pieces, but at the same time I wanted them to be hopeful, right? I'm hopeful that as humans we will kind of get our act together, and we'll realize that we can't keep treating our home, which is the planet. This is our home. We only have one. We're on the same ball.
Yeah.
That we'll kind of get it together, and that we'll have more of a symbiotic relationship with the organic world around us. So I started imagining these little huts and houses that we could create, like almost like Ewok Village meets like, water world type thing. And this one specifically. And it's a construction, an assemblage of found objects. And here on the left, you see kind of like in the process where I'll go and I'll stain driftwood of roughly the same size and use this to kind of build the structures along with more organic pieces. And then lately I've been really into using the shells and sea anemones for roofs and other apparatus for the different pieces. But I also like to leave Easter eggs in my pieces. So, walking around this piece, there's actually a PCH one sign that's been knocked down to give reference to where this might be. And then on the side, there's a little sea level rise scale from 1 to 6, kind of speaking to the idea that this, we are going to have to deal with sea level rise. We're already at that point. But, we could try to adapt and take in stride and be better as a species and kind of change our ways, or we can go the other way and it doesn't go well. But I'm hopeful, we're going to get together. And so I want these pieces to be kind of whimsical and kind of beachy and, kind of surreal in a lot of ways, very similar to the paintings I've been doing.
And I love the scale of these also. One of the reasons I wanted to show the one in process is, you see like an average Amazon box. So, and the bottle of glue. So you kind of have an idea of the scale. And then I know it may be hard for people to see, but you have a couple of them behind you also, for scale. These aren't small,
Yeah.
like two.
So if I back up to it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Justin,
so, oh, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
Justin, when you're making these pieces, do you have an idea of what you want to create and then you go collect to fulfill that? Or do you go and collect debris and see what it builds on its own?
That's all the above. So honestly, it's like, sometimes I'll be at the beach and I'll find this piece of driftwood. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, look at this thing. That starts the kind of the conversation in my mind about what this could be. But a lot of times I'll do some preliminary sketches of what I want to create. And then it's kind of an Easter egg hunt to see if I can find them, right? So this piece here, this is kind of like a walking house in a lot of ways. But this one, so for instance, that larger shell on the top, actually I have one here I can show you. They're pretty interesting, and no, I didn't find it around here. I actually found this in Tahiti. But when we kind of, I've gone on a number of surf trips over the years, and whenever I do, I tend to like pull elements that I can find when I'm there, and I bring them home, and then they start to kind of like plan themselves, right? So this one specifically, I knew I wanted to do something that felt as if it was a vehicle / creature kind of climbing out of the ocean. And you'll see there's that one in the shot in the middle of the sideways view of that one arced kind of claw-shaped piece of wood. This piece was derived in a lot of ways off that one shape. I found that shape and I saw, this is a really interesting like claw, and it had like a shoulder element, as you can see in the left image. And it started to kind of work around that one piece. And as an artist, I think there's something really liberating about being constrained to what you have to work with. So in these cases, I'm completely constrained to what I can find in terms of the elements. And what I do want to do is a lot of these elements, I don't change their shapes dramatically. So these pieces of driftwood, these shells, these elements, these pieces of glass, they're more or less the way I found them, other than doing some cleanup and really to bring out the colors and the textures, which I like to do. But for instance, on the right, the elements coming out from underneath the shells, if they're tentacles or, a scarf or something off this vehicle creature, those pieces of wood, that is what they were. I didn't really shape them very much, other than stain them and kind of beautify the wood. And then also here you can see some of the Easter eggs, down on the left, the bottom of the California sign and the little tick marks for the sea level rise. But I've been enjoying this series a lot in terms of like getting people to think about, if we continue to do what we do and the oceans continue to become more acidic, creatures that create shells aren't going to be able to create their shells anymore. They actually won't harden. So we won't be able to see these artifacts, these kind of pieces of debris from life in the future if, again, we don't kind of shape up. So I want to tell that story in a whimsical way.
Definitely. How many of these do you have so far?
Right now I have, is it 5? I have 5 finished, and I have another like 15 planned.
Oh, good.
So, it's to be kind of a beach bum scavenger, you tend to collect a lot of materials over the years. So my office is filled with all kinds of tidbits of, as my wife says, debris and garbage, but they're treasures to me.
But, that's being an artist. It's
right? Yeah, I know.
All like a hoard. Definitely. Cool. Oh yeah, and then I forgot I wanted to share this piece too, which is, it's wall hung, but also adds, the elements. So tell us about this piece.
So this piece I planned and completed in the first part of kind of lockdown during the pandemic. And the last, so my daughter's school kind of closed for school, and then that next day she'd been begging me to take her to the Santa Monica Pier and the fun zone there. And like, at that time we didn't know what was going on, so like I got the day after school, okay, let's go to the pier. So I took her and a friend the last day before everything pretty much was locked down to the pier. And then in the weeks after that, the news came out about really what was going on with COVID, and this is big. And I started to think about social distancing and the fun zone at the pier, and this idea that we're not gonna be back there, maybe not ever, but definitely not for a long time. And I started thinking about this idea as like, well, okay, well, when things change, is that something worth celebrating, or is that something worth being really remorseful and sad about? So this piece here, I wanted to kind of reflect that. So I took the classic Santa Monica Pier sign and I modified it so it reads Santa Monica Bay Mausoleum, and then I made it in such a way that it also can read museum, historic fishing, boating, cafes. And really is to speak about the change that we've seen not only in the environment but in our lives as well. So this piece also, I wanted to start to combine some of my digital painting with the kind of the abstract assemblage to kind of tell that story. And I have another one is in the process. Is a commission for another place in San Diego. So it's been fun. It's interesting. And this I'm getting excited about, starting to combine different aspects of my skill set in interesting exploratory ways.
Yeah, I really like how you're bringing in, the different series that you've done, the painting and the assemblage. And I can imagine, another piece maybe being all white. So I don't know, something to think about.
Yeah, maybe, more tactile, more about shapes and shadows and highlights.
Yeah, definitely. And then we come to the whitewashing series. And I wanted to share the picture with you in it because it shows the size. I think these are 4 by 4 feet. Is that right?
Yeah, these are 4 by 4 feet.
Yeah. So kind of tell us about the series before we have 3 other works to look at.
Awesome.
Tell us about the series, how it came about.
Yeah, so I've been working on this series on and off for the last 3 years. And I always like to talk about the genesis, or like kind of the flashpoint. For me, that kind of starts me getting excited about, creating a body of work. And what started this series specifically was a very simple moment. I was driving my daughter back from soccer practice, and we were listening to NPR, and it was during I'll call it the shithole country time period, and my daughter is adopted from Ethiopia, and we're listening, and there was a pause in the news article, and she's very quiet in the back. She says, "Daddy, am I going to get sent back to Africa? Because if I get sent back to Africa, I don't have a family there, and how is that going to work?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what are you talking about?" And I didn't realize we were listening to an article about kind of immigration and everything that's going on, and kind of the unfounded separation of different minority and ethnic groups around the world in terms of what our immigration policies are. And that spawned this series. I wanted to make a series of work around this isn't normal, this isn't right. The rhetoric we're hearing coming out of this current administration is so decisive and just it's created as a smokescreen to cover up what they're doing. At the same time, it's really hurtful. So I wanted to create pieces that, you know, people that feel hurt or feel neglected, who they are, can look and say, yeah, this isn't right. The series is called The Whitewashing of America. And I think a lot of the rhetoric and everything that's going on is to divide, is really to whitewash what's occurring in terms of, I think, a lot of changes in our policies, not for the better, to serve the few and not everybody. It's, you know, this idea of we the people, all of us, I think is being left by the wayside, and I don't think that's right. So these pieces are exactly that. They're all whitewashed. It's all about subject matter around the politics. There's a little bit of departure from the beach, but in terms of how I'm building them, they're also assemblages and found objects, using those to put them together. This one here specifically speaking about that, you know, a little less than half our country kind of voted for this, and they're kind of totally cool with us throwing away truth and the freedom of press and equality and science and democracy and American dream. And it's also kind of a riff on how I see our Constitution being used. But really, I want people to see these and I want them to, you know, kind of be engaging. I want them to be quiet in how they're rendered, but to have a big voice in terms of what their meanings are. This one specifically, it says grab and buy. It's made entirely out of Barbie legs. And down in the corner, you'll see -45. And again, it's funny too, because you know, this one, Barbie legs, the other one was a Tonka truck. You know, the first one, different elements I've found. All of the kids, you know, my 9-year-old at the time daughter is aware of everything going on, and it's hurting her. And I want everyone to know, it's like, you know, our kids are center stage for what's occurring, and it's we shouldn't shy away from talking to them about what's going on. So all these pieces in our house, I'll put them up initially, and we have discussions about them as a family as the night before I put them away to send out. So that's kind of the background behind some of these. There's another one. This one was made entirely out of defunct figurines from a video game. And that moment of Donald Duck and Tinkerbell in that box. This kind of going back to the question about, you know, do you plan your work and then you find the objects, or do the objects kind of like speak to you? This one specifically, the object spoke to me. So during, you know, about 2.5 years ago, we moved, and, you know, having kids, anyone has kids, you end up with a ton of toys, man. And it's like, they're either going to a landfill or eBay or some, you know, neighbor or another relative's child. And I'm like, again, being the packer, I'm like, man, I can't throw these away. I got to figure out something to do. So I started unpacking after we moved a bunch of boxes, and I found the old Tonka truck. I found the Barbies. I found these figurines. And this one specifically, when I opened up the box, that moment of Tinkerbell and Donald Duck spoke to me. And, you know, Donald, and, you know, the correlation between his demeanor, his name, and our current, you know, president, it really sparks something, especially when we think about the Me Too movement. So this piece here specifically, it is called A Nation Divided. And it's kind of playing off both sides of the coin. So the copy on the piece, "All hail the Donald," can also be read, "All hail the Donald." And really what I liked about this piece is, you know, you have delivery people come to your house. I put this one up facing our front door, and it was really interesting to see people's reaction to what they thought it meant, depending on, you know, where they were. But I always like to eat Easter eggs about, you know, what I think it's all about. So in this case, you'll notice this American flag it's sitting over. All my pieces in this series are over an American flag. And it's distressed, it's upside down. But also the shape the figurines are in, around Donald Duck, who's the center, some of them are elated, some of the figures are happy and joyous, some look like they're ready to fight. But if you pull back and you look at it, the shape of them makes up the skull and crossbones. And the idea behind it is like a nation divided will fall. So no matter how you think about it, we do need to come together and embrace all of us. We can't keep doing what we're doing in terms of our politics. So
I also saw this one as a chessboard. You know, it's like thinking about nation divided and the two sides. I mean, that's
yeah,
like
like
a whole other level to it too.
yeah, the psychological kind of like moving is war basically in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. So
exactly. I think that's actually our last one. I didn't want to show too many because you have your online solo show coming up with Shoebox Projects on October 10th, and there's also going to be an artist talk with Karen Gutfreund, who published a recent book, curated an amazing book on political art, all about Donald Trump. So I'm looking forward to that conversation for sure. So, I know you'll be talking more about the work. So I wanted to give a teaser in this video of what's to come. Definitely. And I'll share in our YouTube and in our blog post all the information for anybody that's listening for the reception, and also a link to your show when it's up. So do you have, I'm going to go back and unshare the screen here. Do you have plans of, do you have ideas for new artwork after this? Or I know you're still working on, the previous series, the sculptures, but do you have ideas for brand new work?
yeah, no, I definitely the sculptures. I'm really engaged with the sculptures right now, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing double time right now. I've switched gears to finish a few more of the whitewashing pieces because I think they're important based on what we have coming up on November 3rd. And depending on that, maybe I'll do some more. I hope not. I hope that'll be the end of the series. That'd be fantastic. So I've been doing double time between that and the sculptures, gathering and kind of like thinking about those pieces. I'm also really engaged in the idea of Barbie in her kind of fictional reality way of getting more political about the ocean and climate. So she's going to help me in doing that. Some digital paintings to augment the sculptures.
Okay.
So that's going to be kind of coming to kind of really to kind of broaden that viewpoint. And it's not only about kind of creating artifacts like sculptures that are hopeful for the future, but at the same time are time capsules of what you can find now. But also, what are the things we can possibly do as humans to, consider in our day-to-day life? So she's gonna help me do that. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Also, along with the whitewashing show, you're creating like bandanas. What are you creating, or what are you doing besides the show to get the word out, to spread the message, to communicate, the angst that we're all feeling right now?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I like this idea of creating bandanas. So right now I'm creating a bandana that I'll have ready for the show. So if anyone wants to see how that turns out, come to the show. I'll be able to show you. I want to do some stickers and some temporary tattoos and get those out to people to kind of get up. I'm also going to be taking some of the whitewashing pieces, which are three-dimensional, and then being able to render them two-dimensionally in large kind of posters. I'm going to be putting those up around town in different places. And some of them, I'm thinking about like, attaching like a big, huge Sharpie so people can kind of have at it and tell the poster what they think and kind of making it a little bit more fun. But to try to get people to think about what's at stake coming up on November 3rd. And, not a lot of people have their opinions already made up, but I think it's important to get people out to vote. So I'm hoping that'll be the message. It's like, you see this, like, dude, vote, everybody vote. So
Definitely. Well, it's been so great talking with you, Justin. Looking at your work in its entirety, the different series that you're working on, and hearing about, what you're doing next. And we're really looking forward to your show. And the show is actually, it's online with Shoebox Projects, but you're actually also going to be showing it, you have like a space in your home that you're turning into a gallery. Are you going to do Matterport with that? Have you decided?
I'd like to do Matterport, so I'm planning on doing that. It's a great tool. And what I really love about it for the work I'm doing specifically, it allows you kind of move around the pieces more seamlessly. So you're not going to be there, but you'll get a good sense of the dimensionality and the materials it was made of. And I think it's a really good piece of technology for more dimensional pieces. So I'm definitely get that done. And yes, I'm calling it the balcony art space. So I'm hollowing out a few rooms in our house to put up a gallery. So I'm also thinking about having people, we can talk about this more during the show, if they want to come and actually see the pieces. We'll do social distancing, we'll be wearing masks, but lots of hand sanitizer, but I'm going to welcome people by appointment to come take a look if they'd like to.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And we'll share the Matterport around so, people can go and see it and, online if they still feel unsafe about seeing it in person. So
absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Justin. So great to meet with you. And yeah, everybody, thank you for listening in and watching, and we will see you for our next conversation. Take care and have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.